You're watching Channel 7. Wise choice. Welcome back to the Daily Rundown with me, Paul Burgess, and my guests, Maddie Howard and Chris Keogh. Nigel Farage says he is standing down as leader of the UK Independence Party. Mr Farage said his political ambition has been achieved, with the UK having voted to leave the EU. He said he would not change his mind about quitting as he did after the general election in 2015. He said he would quit after failing to win a seat. I wish it had said falling on the floor, sorry. Failing to win a seat at last year's general election, but stayed on after the party rejected his resignation. He said he's resigned because he wants his life back. Are we sad to see him go, or are we glad to see the back of him? Will we see the back of him?
Well, that's the first question, really,
one,
isn't it? I doubt we have seen the back of him, to be honest with you. Like I say, he's resigned before he, on the night of the referendum, he conceded, unconceded, re-unconceded, and so on. He turns on a sixpence all the time, basically, to keep himself in the news. So, because in essence, in my view, is that Nigel Farage only represents Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that this is some sort of orchestrated career move, because he left open the possibility of him assisting with the negotiations regarding actually triggering Article 50 and leaving the EU. So I don't know whether he's after a move.
He's also said he wants to kind of offer his services to any other European country now that wants to take their own referendum on their membership of the European Union. He's actually said that.
Seriously?
Yeah.
My God.
So he's probably going to, charge about $1,500 an hour to be a consultant.
A freelance consultant.
I did it in Britain. I can do it for you.
Yeah.
It's really big of him.
There's something I find a massive irony just sits at the centre of Nigel Farage with things like that. He's this champion of democracy who constantly meddles in public affairs despite not actually being elected, other than to represent his constituents in the European Parliament, which he doesn't actually do because his voting record is pretty poor, I'm led to believe. So I don't see how all his sort of fanboys don't quite see this central irony to him, really. But that's why I don't think we'll see the back of him. He's like a consulting troublemaker, in essence. That seems to be.
Apparently, he's got one of the, as well as kind of just involvement, just attendance at the EU, where he should have been a kind of regular MEP. He had one of the lowest attendance records.
Yeah, I think that's possibly a good thing, bearing in mind that when he was there last time, to just rub the noses in to basically.
Yes,
stick
what
two
did you
fingers
think of that?
Well, for someone who represents the common sense party, and this argument is the common sense approach. Now, is it really common sense to go to basically blow raspberries at people that you're hoping to negotiate and do you a decent deal with? I don't think so. That's not representing the British people as he claims to be doing. But that is representing Nigel Farage because he got him on telly again a lot, and that's what it is. I think we should just have a moratorium of talking about him, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he completely spoke like a teenager having their revenge, again, like the geek strikes back, or like a girl who rejected him, like who's laughing now? And it's all completely.
You're not laughing now, are you? That was the line.
And how you can watch that and think that man cares about you.
Yeah.
It's sad and it's very strange.
I saw after he'd done his speech at the EU Parliament, I saw quite a clever post on Facebook, which basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, but does anyone else get the feeling, because he'd made it when he started his speech he said 17 years ago when I told you that I wanted the UK out of the EU, you all laughed at me. You're not laughing now, are you? Quoted. That's not paraphrased. Yeah. And this post was basically saying, considering that, does anyone else get the feeling that for 17 years this is a little boy who's had a real bee in his bonnet, like a gripe, and he would have done anything to get this to get us to where we are now, just so he could go to the EU and say that.
He reminded me throughout this campaign, and you know, in basically every dealings that I've had with him via the TV. I've never met him, thankfully, of the kind of sort of snivelly little sort of schoolyard creep who then gets made a prefect.
Yeah.
And then has that little bit of power to say you can't walk down that corridor. That would be, if he ever rose to any position of power, it would be horrific. The number of sort of gripes and grievances he would be settling scores, left, right, and centre from perceived grievances that he had with the wider world.
Yeah.
I just find it odd, the whole sort of circus that surrounds him and the people that. That the amount of coverage that he gets.
Yeah,
somebody who doesn't say anything really.
The mainstream media give him far too much attention and credence, and they don't mock any mockable action. They completely represent it as if he's elected, and he's not, and as if what he's saying is based in fact when it's not. I mean, this is a man that openly lied and then nearly said the word lied, he said mistake, about how he was going to give to the NHS magic money that of course we didn't have, and he knew he couldn't. And even that, it's still not making a laughing stock of him. I mean, you've got to wonder what kind of culture we have in Britain now where this can happen, because 10 or so years ago the BNP were not, and their views, their racist views were not seen as normal in any way. And now with the outcome of the referendum, racism,
it's been horrific,
which is what he represents, with the way that he represents immigrants and talks about immigrants as he calls them, or humans as they're also known. The way that he talks about them, it's condoning a culture that I'm just very afraid of. So yeah, as you say.
I think that poster, which funnily enough had the words breaking point on it, was the breaking point for this upsurge of racism. We've always had that underbelly. I think every country does. Absolutely, it's never been so prevalent. It's never been so visible.
The difficulty with it all is that whether to stay in or leave the EU is a massively complicated,
huge
decision to make. And I know which way I voted. I don't know whether I'm 100% right, but based on the campaigning, it made it, anything that makes complicated issues simple on the face of it is based on lies and misinformation, because it's not telling you the full truth. And so basically to go out and say that, to lift an image that was pretty much directly taken from Nazi propaganda, I don't know if you saw the imagery of it, and say that Europe is at breaking point about something that wasn't anything to do with the EC and so on. That clearly has given a shot in the arm to, like I said, this underbelly, this undercurrent of people. In the last 20, 30 years, we've effectively said to people, no, you can't say that, it's not right to say that. And people have basically possibly said it at home in their own houses. Whereas now, people are feeling empowered to say it in public. Now,
that's a very good point.
And worse, and then so that the people who used to say it in public now think, I can take it a bit further, and so on and so forth. So I think what the most important thing that we can do as a populace now is to actually stamp it back out and tell people, no, we've voted to renegotiate our terms and conditions with the trading bloc, in essence. We've not voted to travel back in time.
Yeah.
So let's just, the gollywog's not coming back on Robinson's jam or anything like that, lads. Get back in the kitchen,
Do you think the fact that we were so PC for so long, and that it was so taboo to say anything, has made this reaction much stronger than it would have been had we been a bit more relaxed on that front in the first place?
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think when people talk about PC and political correctness gone mad, I think that what they're referring to is being kind and trying to think about how you're talking about other people. So I actually don't think we were that PC. I think what's happened is we've had so many discussions about how Britain had become PC that it told people to agree with that notion that we were PC. But we still weren't that tolerant, clearly, as you can see evidenced now. And we've become so right-wing, slowly but surely. And even that is quite an intolerant and right-wing sort of view to have.
In fact, when the Brexit vote was revealed, apparently the groups across Europe who were most celebratory out in the streets Well Done Britain were the far-right groups.
Oh, yeah,
the
I mean,
real
Yeah.
far-right groups.
Fascism is on the rise, and that's not even a sensational claim anymore.
No. Well, when you've got people like Marine Le Pen saying that this is a sweet day for history, or what she said in Parliament after Farage had done his speech about Brexit, then, you know, are you on the right side of history there when the fascists are applauding your actions?
Yeah.
You know, possibly not. But I mean, in terms of political correctness, I think there has been something, and certain people on the left or whatever do use political correctness to an extent to sort of shut up, to quash debates. I think that can happen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think I agree with Maddie though in that the term political correctness is used to cover all sorts of different things. What is just normally in the honours would be called politeness and decency. You know, so it never crosses my mind to sort of say to racially abuse somebody, because why would you do that? I don't understand it. Yeah.
Just very, very quickly, do you think that a lot of the people who voted Leave now, who are not the people out there doing horrific things in the streets, are feeling cheated?
Yeah.
I think the evidence is there that there have been, and I know there's quite a few people who've said basically I voted to leave to save the NHS. That you know, it was like a patriotic.
They had a
good
good.
They had a good motivation.
Yeah.
And then within a day, it was said, well, actually, none of us actually promised
That's
this
not gonna
£350
happen.
million to the NHS.
Oh, it's dark times. It's dark times. We're going to take one more very, very short break, but please stay with us. Come back. We've got lots more to chat about. See you soon.